Hello y'all, and welcome back. So in this module we're going to be exploring what I consider to be possibly the single most interesting question within ethics, and that's the question of weakness of will. When you know that something is wrong, morally wrong, why do you do it anyway? And we can frame the question, we can set it up like this. Aristotle in his Nicomachean Ethics says that people come in 4 levels of virtue. 4 levels of virtue, and as I sketch these, think about which one you might be at. At the bottom level, says Aristotle, is the vicious person, the vicious person. Now, when we hear the adjective vicious, we tend to think of somebody that's really nasty, aggressive, with an undertone or a threat of physical violence. That's not what Aristotle means by vicious here. Vicious is just the adjectival form of the noun vice. So he just means characterized by vice. So somebody who makes really poor decisions, somebody who's not wise, somebody who's too gossipy, somebody who's not really self-controlled with respect to food or drink. That is a vicious person just as much as somebody that's physically aggressive or has a temper. Now, the vicious person is characterized by desiring bad things and doing bad things. There's this kind of consistency. Say what you will about this guy, but at least he's consistent. He desires to do bad things, and he does bad things. Might not be a very happy person, but at least he's consistent. A level above him, a level above the vicious person, is the weak-willed person. This is a person who desires to do the right thing, so their mind is correct, they desire to do the right thing, they know the right thing, but they're just not self-controlled enough to do it, and they end up doing bad things. Okay? So this is a person who desires good, but does bad. They're just not strong enough to hold out. The person above them, though, is strong enough to hold out. Above the weak-willed person is the self-controlled person. And the self-controlled person also experiences conflict in their desires, like the weak-willed person. But unlike the weak-willed person, they have the internal strength, the fortitude, to hold out against their bad desires. So they hold out, they struggle within themselves, but they hold out, and in the end, they do the right thing. So there's consistency there. This person is conflicted in their desires, but they, in the end, do the right thing. They hold out and do the right thing. Now, above these 2 levels of conflict, we have another level. Now, we might ordinarily, kind of in our moral thinking, think that to be self-controlled is a very high virtue indeed. If not the highest virtue, then at least it's something that characterizes a virtuous person, that you have self-control. But Aristotle says there's a level that is higher even than the self-controlled person, and he says this is the actual virtuous person. And from the way that the progression has been going, you can tell what the virtuous person looks like. The virtuous person experiences no internal conflict. So unlike the weak-willed person or the self-controlled person, they experience no internal conflict whatsoever. And they only desire to do the right thing, and as a result, they only do the right thing. Now, lest you think this is a little too far-fetched, that nobody in the world is like this, I'm inclined to agree with a thinker that I like reading, that everybody has a particular vice to which they're just not tempted at all. And this particular thinker's vice is gambling. He says, I've never been tempted to gamble. If somebody comes to me asking to play cards for money, I say, how much money are you hoping to win? Take it and go away, right? He just doesn't experience that temptation at all. And I'm of the mind that, and this is just a completely groundless theory, but in my life it seems to me that's true. Everybody has at least one bad thing that they're just not tempted to at all. They don't struggle at all. And so the idea here would be just extend that over the full range of vices. Extend that ease that you experience with respect to that vice over the full range of vices, and then you know what it's like to be this virtuous person, this person who only ever desires to do good, and as a result they do good. Now, the virtuous person is pretty straightforward. This person might not exist, but it's pretty easy to see how they operate, just good all the way down. And oddly enough, the vicious person is also pretty easy to understand. They're just a bad person, a rotter to the core. They desire bad things, and they do bad things. But it's those people in the middle that are a little bit harder to understand, and in particular the weak-willed person. And the problem comes from the fact that will we've defined as the faculty that decides on and initiates action. So if you do something, it's because you willed to do it. To use the same tired example, right? If I raise my hand as part of this illustration, that's because I willed to do it. But in the case of weakness of will, your will is set against the action that you're performing. You will not to do it. Whatever the thing is, whatever it is, this bad thing that you're struggling not to do, your will is set against it. and yet you do it. But if your will is set against it, and your will is the faculty that decides on and initiates action, we need to find another faculty, something else here that's deciding on and initiating this action, because clearly your will isn't doing it. Your will is resisting it. Your will is set against it. In fact, we say that your will is too weak. Too weak for what? Too weak to stop whatever it is that's actually deciding on and initiating that action. So there's a paradox here. The will both is and is not the thing that initiates action in the case of weakness of will. So clearly we need to open the human person up, pop the hood, and kind of tinker around to find out what's going on in cases of weakness of will. This is why this is such a puzzle. And not only is it interesting in its own right, but it's incredibly practically important. Your willpower is the thing that stands between you and being your best self, between you studying for long hours at a time and becoming incredibly successful, and you studying for a short amount of time and then going on your phone, right? That's your willpower right there, separating you from achieving all of your loftiest goals. So not only is this of independent importance philosophically, interest philosophically, but it's also of tremendous practical importance. So in the next video, we're going to look at one theory of weakness of will and to see how that could help us to understand this puzzle. Thanks.